Hello, this is Jeff Kelly. One of the most common things I hear from people is this: Jeff, I looked online and I think I make too much money to file Chapter 7. And sometimes they will say it like the case is already closed, like there is no point even talking to a bankruptcy attorney, like the answer is automatic. But here is the truth. A lot of people think they make too much money for Chapter 7 when they actually do qualify. And on the other hand, some people assume they qualify when they do not. So in this video, I want to clear this up in plain English and explain how this really works. Because this is an area where a lot of folks get bad information, half information, or internet information that does not fit their real situation. And when that happens, people delay getting help. They stay stressed out, they keep draining retirement accounts, they keep borrowing from family, they keep cashing out things they should have left alone, all because they assumed Chapter 7 was off the table. So let's walk through it. First, let's start with the basic issue. Why do people think they make too much money for Chapter 7? The answer is the means test. The means test is a financial formula used in bankruptcy cases to determine whether someone qualifies for Chapter 7 or whether they may need to look at Chapter 13 instead. A lot of people hear the words means test and immediately think one thing: income. And yes, income matters, but income is not the whole story. That is where people get tripped up. Because qualifying for Chapter 7 is not just about how much money comes in. It is also about your household size, your recent income history, certain allowed expenses, your secured debts, your tax obligations, and other financial factors. So just because your income sounds high does not automatically mean you are disqualified. Let me say that again. A decent income does not automatically knock you out of Chapter 7. Now, the first step usually involves comparing your household income to the median income for a household of your size in your state. If your income is under the median, then in many cases, qualifying for Chapter 7 is more straightforward. But if your income is over the median, that does not automatically mean you are out. It just means we have to keep going. That is the part people often do not understand. They think over median means no Chapter 7. That is not always true. Sometimes a person is over median and still passes the means test after we account for the deductions and expenses the law allows. For example, maybe you have a mortgage payment, maybe you have a car payment, maybe you pay taxes at a high rate, maybe you have health insurance costs, maybe you have mandatory payroll deductions. Maybe you support a family. Maybe you have childcare expenses. Maybe you have other legitimate expenses that affect the analysis. Those things matter. This is why I do not like quick internet conclusions. The bankruptcy code is more detailed than that. Here is another thing people miss. The means test usually looks back at the last 6 full calendar months of income, not just what you are making right now this very second. That matters a lot. Maybe you had overtime for a while. Maybe you got bonuses. Maybe you had a temporary second job. Maybe your spouse had income that is now changed. Maybe you were working a lot more 6 months ago than you are now. Or the opposite could be true. Maybe your income recently went up. The timing matters. And because timing matters, the answer can change depending on when the case is filed. That does not mean anybody should play games with the system. It means you need competent legal advice before making assumptions. Sometimes a person comes in and says, I already know I do not qualify. Then we actually run the numbers and it turns out they do. Other times, someone really is better suited for Chapter 13, and that is fine too. Chapter 13 is not some kind of failure. For many people, Chapter 13 is the right tool, but the mistake is ruling out Chapter 7 too early without having the case properly reviewed. Let me give you a practical example. Suppose someone has a solid job and earns what sounds like a good salary. They assume they are too far above the line. But then we look closer. They have a family household. They have a mortgage. They have 2 car payments. They pay significant taxes. They have insurance deductions. They may have other allowed expenses. Now the picture starts to change. On paper, the gross income may have looked too high. But once the law is applied correctly, they may still qualify for Chapter 7. That happens. Now let's talk about another problem. Some people focus only on gross income. That is a mistake. Gross income is important, but gross income by itself does not tell you whether you qualify. And that is one reason why casual advice from friends, coworkers, or people online is so unreliable. Someone will say, "Well, my cousin made less than that, and he did Chapter 13. That tells me almost nothing." Different household size, different state, different debt structure, different expenses, different timing, different facts. Bankruptcy is very fact-specific. You need somebody to look at your actual numbers, not somebody else's story. Here is something else worth saying. Do not assume that because you own a home, have a job, or have respectable income, bankruptcy is not available to you. Bankruptcy law exists for working people. A lot of the people I talk to are hardworking people. They have jobs, they have families, they tried to keep up. They did not sit around doing nothing. They got buried by credit cards, medical bills, personal loans, lawsuits, garnishments, or just the basic cost of living. Good people get in trouble, and many of them wait too long to explore their options because they are embarrassed or because they think they earn too much to qualify. That delay can be costly. They drain savings, they raid retirement, they keep paying on debt that is never really going away, and sometimes they make settlements or withdrawals that create even bigger problems. So what should you do if you think you make too much for Chapter 7? Simple. Do not guess. Do not rely on a website calculator. Do not assume one paycheck tells the whole story. And do not talk yourself out of getting legal advice. Have a bankruptcy attorney review the full picture. That means income, household size, monthly expenses, debt type, assets, recent financial changes, and the timing of the filing. That is how you get a real answer. The title of this video is, I make too much money for Chapter 7, or do I? And the answer is this: maybe you do, maybe you do not, but you are not going to know that just by guessing. You need the numbers reviewed correctly. So if you are overwhelmed with debt, and you have been assuming Chapter 7 is not an option because of your income, that may not be true. Get the facts, get your case evaluated, and find out where you really stand. Because sometimes the people who are most convinced they do not qualify are the very ones who end up being relieved to learn that they do. This is Jeff Kelly. Thanks for watching.